diving into some of the solutions. I'm going to get a little biochemical here, just so that I can get you a good, thorough education and kind of background on nutritional relationships with estrogen and how estrogen is properly metabolized, just so you have a better understanding of it. But I want to give you practicality first. So I'll give you practicality, then we'll dive into the biochemistry for those of you who really geek out on the biochemistry stuff. So number one, what can we do? What to do to reduce naturally the estrogen load, right? So if we're trying to reduce that estrogen load, what are some things that we can do? Number one, lift weight, weightlifting, not cardio. Cardio doesn't do much in this regard. We want weight-bearing exercise, and it doesn't have to be heavy weight. You don't have to go and put 250 pounds on a squat rack and try to squat it. We're talking about body weight activity. You've heard me talk about high-intensity interval training before. This is things like push-ups and squats and sit-ups and lunges and jump rope and burpees and plank holds, like body weight stuff that is weight-bearing, that's going to help build some muscle. Why do we want to build muscle? Because muscle speeds up the metabolism and the metabolic rate, which burns that fat. Remember, the more fat cells, the more fat you have, the more you cycle your androgens and aromatize them into estrogen, creating an estrogen-dominant scenario. So there's a lot of research behind weightlifting being a very, very important part of overcoming estrogen dominance. Now, some of you may be asking, I'm tired all the time, my muscles hurt, I can't really exercise. Like, if you're that person that's exercise intolerant, then what I would suggest that you do initially is get in the pool and do some, low gravity, almost zero gravity type of activity. Get the muscles pumped and moving. And as you work toward improving your pain scenario, you can start slowly adding in the activity, the weight-bearing component. Number two, it's a micronutrient-dense diet. And I'm going to really go into detail about why this is important. You want food that's rich in vitamins and minerals. That's what micronutrients are, vitamins and minerals, okay? If your diet is highly processed, it's going to be low in vitamins and minerals. If your diet's low in vitamins and minerals, your body's not going to be able to properly metabolize the estrogen into water-soluble forms that you can excrete and get rid of. So very, very important that you have a micronutrient-dense diet. Now, part of that's going to be eliminating sugar. So no sugar. Now, a lot of you are going to say, well, it's holiday season, come on, no sugar, that's not realistic. It better be realistic. If you want to get healthy, you got to get serious about it. That's why we're gluten-free warriors. That's why we're health warriors, not like health couch potatoes. We got to take that sugar part seriously, because that refined sugar is one of the worst things that you can put in your body. Now, fruit sugar is a different matter, but refined sugar, processed sugar, we want to get it out. Number four, eliminate grain. I said it earlier, gluten is one of the causes. So we got to get those grains out of the diet if we want to get that hormone balance back. Number five, eat organically. We said this earlier, the pesticides are estrogen mimickers. And so if you're consuming a lot of food and you're not using organic foods, then you're going to run into the problem of that exposure. And this includes, so like if we're talking about meats, so if you're not a vegetarian and you're eating meats, that needs to be hormone-free meat. So a lot of your meats, where we get a lot of our exposure to hormones, is in meat. So make sure that with your meats, you follow the kind of the 3 cardinal rules: grass-fed, free-range, organic, or wild game. If you have hunters in the family and you like wild game, more power to you. Eat more wild game. Okay, so that if you're eating those meats, make sure they're free-range, organic, grass-fed. Okay. Number seven on the list is to minimize caffeine. Caffeine is a diuretic. And I'm saying excessive caffeine here, not, some of you may drink a cup of coffee, some of you may drink tea, and you get some natural caffeine that way. You get some natural caffeine in chocolate. That being said, I'm talking about excessive caffeine. What does excessive caffeine look like? 150 milligrams of caffeine or more per day. Now, a cup of coffee is about 100 to 120 milligrams of caffeine, depending on the size. And I'm talking about a 6-ounce cup, not the big 12 ounces or 24 ounces. If you're doing those, you're getting 300, 400, 500 milligrams of caffeine. If you're doing monster drinks or these energy drinks, you're getting several hundred milligrams of caffeine. If you're the pot a day type of coffee drinker, you're way overblowing your caffeine budget. Remember, caffeine has some health properties. There are some benefits to caffeine, but when you go over that 120 kind of milligram per day marker, it turns into a diuretic. It causes nutrient loss. Caffeine stimulates cortisol and adrenaline excretion, drives up insulin and blood sugar, and can create all kinds of problems. So you've got to be real careful with excessive caffeine. So caffeine, control it. Okay. Number 8, alcohol's out. If you're suffering with estrogen dominance, you want to get the alcohol out. The alcohol slows down the liver. It's very important that you understand that the way estrogen is metabolized, when your body produces estrogen and the way it gets rid of estrogen so that you're not developing estrogen-based cancers, heart disease, and other problems, is it is metabolized in your liver. There's 2 different types of metabolic function the liver has. It's a, phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification in the liver help to break estrogen down. Remember what alcohol does. Alcohol bogs the liver down. It basically hijacks those detoxification pathways, and it slows down your body's ability to metabolize your estrogen, hence creating an estrogen scenario in your body that increases the risk of estrogen-based diseases. You don't want that, so get that alcohol out. And the same thing goes for any other medications or drugs that slow down liver detoxification. Now, if you're on a prescribed medication, talk to your doctor about how that medication is metabolized. If it's metabolized in the liver, have a conversation about how you might be able to get off of that medicine. Remember, most medicines, they don't really treat the origin of a disease. They mask the symptoms that you're experiencing to improve your quality of life. So if you, for example, are on a blood pressure medication that's metabolized by your liver, you can naturally lower your blood pressure through a number of these things that we're talking about, right? So if you can do that naturally, then you can also look at asking your doctor to help you wean that medicine down in a way and get it off your liver, get that medication pressure out of your liver so your liver can function properly. Remember, we got enough garbage in the food, we got enough garbage in the air and in the water, 33,000 chemicals plus that we are being exposed to, that our livers have to help us to detoxify. And if you're voluntarily putting more chemicals in, it's going to make this process much, much harder to achieve good health. Number 9 is fiber. Make sure you're getting plenty of fiber. Now, the general rule of thumb is 35 grams a day or so of fiber intake, and this can come from soluble, non-soluble fibers. One of the properties of fiber is that it increases good bacteria and helps with the production of a chemical in the GI tract called glucuronidase. And this chemical is very, very effective at helping you metabolize and to get rid of excessive estrogen. So fiber helps to feed that process. So it's very, very important along those lines. And then number 10, if we're rounding out the list here to the top 10 to-dos, that is to manage stress. Now, it's easier said than done, right? It's easy for me to state, hey, don't be stressed out. It's harder for you if you are stressed out. But remember that a lot of people's stress comes from their poor health. And a lot of people's poor health comes from their decisions. And so if you change your decisions, you can change your health, you can change your stress. It's not going to happen overnight, but a lot of the way that people experience chronic stress is because they have poor management of their diet, poor management of their exercise, poor management of their time, poor management of their life as a whole. And so getting a hold and kind of analyzing these things and seeing where your weaknesses are is a very good first step at kind of getting control of your stress. One of the things I have seen where people are stuck in a job that they hate or a job where their boss is a bear, and so they're miserable. Every day they go to work for 8 hours and they're kind of in fight or flight mode because of the stress of the job. Look, if you're in that type of scenario, it's time to career hunt. It's time to career change. Don't wait around until your health is totally destroyed and then you have to collect a disability check and you can't function. Like, let's get you planning ahead. If you're in that type of scenario, try to create an exit strategy that doesn't financially bankrupt you, and that may take some time. So all this requires some planning. All this requires some thought. All this requires diligence and action taking on your part. And so you want to make sure that you take it all to heart, because it's all important. So these are your top 10. Let's talk a little bit about this micronutrient section and kind of why that's important. Micronutrients, probably one of the least well-discussed topics in health today. People, kind of glaze over the importance of vitamins and minerals. You hear things like, oh, B vitamins are good for energy, and they just kind of glaze over it, and they don't, give you much more than that kind of generic, oh, it's good for you, therefore you need to take 50 supplement pills a day. I want to just reemphasize something to you all. Taking pills is not the solution. Even if you're taking, natural pills, even if you're taking supplements that, let's just say, are not drugs for the intent of helping your body, it's still not the long-term solution. These things are the long-term solution. The supplements should be used as kind of tools to help dig you out of a hole faster. But remember that these behaviors, if you have them consistently, you'll require less pills, including supplements. So the goal over the long haul, over the long term, is to reduce your need on supplementals and to have a diet that's conducive to your good health. Now, some of you with gluten-induced damage to the GI tract, where you've got scarring or villous atrophy or whatever, where you're still malabsorbing even though you're following and adhering to a strict gluten-free diet, that may not match you as much, because you may need nutritional support because you've got that GI damage that's scarred, or that's more of a permanent damage in nature. And so those of you with that type of scenario might need more supplementation. But if you're not that person, if you don't have that issue, follow these things, and let's talk about why. If we look at estrogen metabolism, I want you to understand that all sex steroids, not just estrogen, but all sex steroids, come from the mother hormone cholesterol. Cholesterol is the mother hormone, and this is why we've talked in the past about people demonizing cholesterol, calling cholesterol bad. LDL cholesterol, bad cholesterol, is the precursor to make all of your hormones, and one of the first one that's produced is progesterone, and then through a couple of other conversions, we ultimately get to estrogen. Okay, so cholesterol and then several nutrients play a role in the metabolism of cholesterol and the progesterone and DHEA, dehydroepiandrosterone, and some of the other hormones like 17-hydroxyprogesterone, and then from progesterone we can make different androgens, and those androgens then can convert to estrogen. And there's three predominant forms of estrogen. There's E1, there's E2, and there's E3. And E1 and E2 your body can make E1 estrone, and then it can convert estrone into estradiol, but it can also convert estradiol back into E1. So your body can kind of go back and forth between these two. But E2 and E1, both of them can produce E3, and this is kind of a one-way reaction in that regard. And so these processes, let's talk about, okay, once you get to estrogen, and when I talk about estrogen, I'm really referring to one of the functional forms of estrogen, estradiol, because this is the main form of estrogen in the blood that has most of the estrogenic-like effect on the body. So to get from here down to here, requires nutrients. It requires micronutrients. And so how do we metabolize properly? How do we get from here to the estrogen? And then how do we get the estrogen to metabolize out of the body so that we're not creating estrogen dominance? So let's start up here with some of the nutrients that are required in this process. And one of them is vitamin D. Vitamin D is critical in the proper production of cholesterol getting to estrogen. The other are your B vitamins. And in particular, B6 and B5 play a very big role in this process of getting you from that cholesterol, that master mother hormone, to your functional estrogen. But what happens here is that we have to metabolize that estrogen out. So we metabolize that estrogen into other forms of estrogen, and this has to be done in the liver. So this is what I was talking about earlier, is we convert these estrogens through the liver into water-soluble versions that then we can excrete out through urination predominantly, or through sweat. And so if your liver's overwhelmed, if your liver is not working properly, phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification in the liver require micronutrients. And so there are a number of different nutrients that are required by your liver to properly detoxify. B2 is one of them. Selenium is another one. I'm abbreviating selenium as SE here. And cysteine and glutamine and methionine. If you've ever heard of SAMe, S-adenosylmethionine, it's a form of methionine, and glutamine, like these are necessary for your liver to properly function. Then there are other plant-based nutrients like alpha lipoic acid is very important for this process. Zinc is very important for this process. So you've got a lot of nutrients that your liver needs to properly be able to metabolize estrogen into its valid form. So once we get estrogen, there's an intermediary step. So we metabolize that estrogen, and that estrogen is in a number of different forms. There's actually about 6 additional forms of estrogen, depending on how it's broken down in the liver. And these forms of estrogen require additional metabolism, but some of them require, you've probably all heard of methylation before. The process of methylation is very, very important for metabolizing out active estrogen metabolites that increase the risk for cancer and heart disease. Methylation, this process here of methylation in the body requires very specifically folate. This is why you'll see a lot of the products, the supplements on the market for estrogen contain folate. You'll see they contain B12. A lot of them will contain choline. It's because these nutrients are necessary for the methylation process. And that's, in essence, you need these nutrients to properly methylate, because methylation of estrogen is a very, very important part of how we get rid of it. But there's another enzyme, there's another step called COMT. So once we metabolize estrogen, we have one more step to make to get it out of the body. There's an enzyme, and you may have heard of the COMT gene. Catecholomethyltransferase is the name of that gene. And so this enzyme helps to final stage estrogen into a form where we can excrete it. And this enzyme is magnesium dependent. In essence, we need magnesium for it to be properly metabolized, for that gene to properly work, so that we can finally get to an estrogen that's capable of being excreted out of the body without hurting the body or increasing the risk of developing different types of cancers. So if you don't have that micronutrient dense diet, you can just see, and this is a rudimentary drawing here, but vitamin D, B vitamins, B2, B5, B2 here, selenium, cysteine, methionine, glutamine, folate, B12, choline, magnesium, all necessary for the proper production of estrogen, and then for the proper breakdown of estrogen, so that we can metabolize it out of the body so that it doesn't hurt us or do more harm in the process. So all that's necessary, and that's why we want a micronutrient-rich diet, because if we've got a diet that's high in refined food and low in nutrient density, that estrogen is going to get trapped. It's going to increase our risk for estrogen dominance diseases, and that is going to land you in hot water. Hey, and if you missed the earlier part of this series, click right here so you can go back and get caught up. The information there might be critical to helping you on your path to better health. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe for updates below. Have a great day.